Yes, please.
You still need one more person. Start, or I could just skip the stuff we gotta vote on.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get rolling and we'll come back to the agenda items that we need votes on. We call our meeting to order. As is our custom here, we generally go around the room and introduce ourselves to each other. So we'll start at the table. If you just share your name and represent or locality. Tyrone Nelson, I represent Rico County.
Neil Gibson, City Attorney's Office.
Dan Smith.
Dan Schmidt in Rico County.
Mark Smith, Chesterfield.
Dave Anderson, Chesterfield. Bro Hughes, Henrico County.
Carol Adams, GRTC.
Jim Engel, Chesterfield County.
I'll go around the corner to my left.
Dina Loveson.
Philip Diller, GRTC.
Fine, not quite GRTC. Anthony Butler, GRTC.
Ashley.
Kevin Hernandez, GRTC. Jonathan Zarella, GRTC.
Adrian Jordan's GRTC.
Julie Martin, GRTC. Douglas, operating for We Drive You.
Derek Frogger, We Drive You.
Ken Lance, Plan RBA.
Tommy Johnson, GRTC.
Short Lawson, RideFinders.
Michael Burke, GRTC.
Swally, GRTC.
Adams,
GRTC.
Linda Boxley, Facility Supervisor, GRTC.
Laura Chapman, GRTC.
All right, is that everyone? All right, thank you. Do we have any public comments? No public comments. Anyone here? No pre-public comments. Anybody here to speak publicly? All right, seeing no one. Let's move to the CEO report.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today on our agenda, we have our proposed FY27 budget, and I just wanted to talk briefly about that before we get to the full budget. This budget represents a real accomplishment for GRTC. It shows that we can sustain reliability, accessibility, and fare free transit while holding cost growth to 1%. Strong reflection of the model we've built here and the discipline we've applied in managing it. I'm really proud of the work that staff has done, and I want to recognize our staff, particularly those who helped develop the budget and worked on several different reiterations of it. It took a great deal of coordination, analysis to get us this proposed budget that we're presenting to you today. This is a strong, steady budget. It reflects what we've achieved and the responsibility we have to continue delivering for the region. So we look forward to the discussion later in the agenda. Next on my item are my employees of the month. First off, we have our Capital Improvement Facility Custodial Supervisor, Mr. Linwood Boxley. The person that submitted Linwood said he does an outstanding job taking care of our buildings and consistently maintains a clean, safe, and welcoming environment. He does everything with great care and attention to detail. He always has an excellent and positive attitude. He goes out of his way to address impromptu requests for service, responding quickly and professionally without hesitation. Linwood takes great pride in keeping the facility clean. Well, Linwood is here with us this morning, so we want you to stand up, Linwood. Next on our list is Ms. Rashonda Coles, also with us this morning. She is a dedicated We Drive You operator who recently volunteered to participate in the CTAB rodeo, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. She consistently arrives early for her shifts and often volunteers to work on her days off, demonstrating a strong commitment to her role and team. She approaches each workday with a positive attitude and a welcoming smile. She has gone unnoticed. She has received multiple commendations and recognition of her outstanding attitude and service by her riders. So we want to congratulate Rashonda Coles on the job well done. Last but not least on my list is Mr. Dietrich Burkhart, and he's not with us. He's one of our maintenance mechanics. Says he's a hardworking and dedicated employee. During one particularly demanding week, he repaired an exceptional number of buses to ensure service wasn't delayed or missed. He takes personal responsibility for keeping vehicles ready. He was a part of the maintenance team that participated in our local rodeo. He exemplifies the standards of excellence we value. So we want to congratulate him in his absence. So I mentioned the CTAB rodeo. That is something new that GRTC participated in for the first time. We expanded it beyond our state rodeo. Normally the competition is local and then state. CTAB was another leg that we participated, but we took it a step further because we also had We Drive You staff, which is our paratransit contract. We had employees from their staff also participate. So we were recognized for our strong performance. First of all, Mr. Hugh Lewis, who is a We Drive You operator, earned Rookie of the Year. And he is here today with his trophy. This is and also Mr. Rondell Daly, who is one of our bus operators. He delivered the best performance in the passenger stop obstacle. He just demonstrated exceptional precision in his curve approach and his passenger safety. So we're going to recognize Mr. Daly. Your recognition reflects the professionalism, skill, and dedication of all GRTC employees, and we are so proud of them, and we want to thank them and our employees of the month for everything that they do to keep GRTC moving forward. Last thing on my list is always TAP. It is always on our agenda. I just wanted to announce that this month, the month of March, we have 2 additional opportunities to support the TAP program. The first one is we are partnering with Flagstop Car Wash for a fundraiser where Flagstop is offering 50% of each sale to support TAP. So this includes individual watches, memberships, as well as gift card purchases. The other partnership we have this month is with Kendra Scott, and that is a jewelry store in Short Pump. Kendra Scott is donating 20% of the purchases to the TAP program. So we have a special event on May 28th, so members can shop in store or online throughout the day. Both of our fundraisers require a special code, so I will be sending that code out to each of you, and I would appreciate it if you would share it with everyone in your arena, whether it's family, friends, constituents. So 50% from Car Wash, from Flagstop is a really good deal, and we're happy to have that partnership with them. And finally, we have our Tap into Transit Day, which I'll keep announcing that until it happens. This is July 14th. We are now turning that into a community fundraiser. We had the first event last year, and it was just a call to action to bring it to people's attention. But now it's an official fundraiser, and we'll be working with the community to have an event where we are working with the local artists. As well as we have a silent auction. So we've had some amazing items donated that we're going to auction off on a silent auction there. So these are some additional fundraising opportunities that we hope will help continue with our open access and our TAP program. So we are excited for all of those events. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam CEO. And again, shout out to the employees who are doing the great work, making GRTC a better place. And are they required to stay?
No, they
Okay, so we don't want to torture you guys. Stay. So, thank you. Have a good rest of the day. And so we'll continue to be locked in on TAP efforts and July 14th, I think.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you'll
sir.
continue to keep us in the loop for that. It's time now for the approval of the April 21st board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes into official record. Moving second, anybody have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda. Medical insurance brokerage services, gasoline fuel delivery contract amendment, procurement manual updates. And I think Ms. Malloy, Mr. Hernandez, Ms. Thompson, I think are all here. Do you have any questions about anything on consent? All right, hearing none, can we get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
I move.
Second.
All right, moving in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ms. Smith, what, do you have anything for development?
Sure, yeah, we had a pretty full agenda last Thursday. One of the items we talked about was paratransit service and a proposal to replace Care Plus with Care on Demand. That was deferred for action at that meeting, and we'll consider it later at our next meeting. So there's a chance for folks to talk to their administration about that. We've, as you know, been working on the expansion service funding allocation framework. Impacts to the operating budget are underway for the scenario. And this discussion will resume following the June transit workshops, which are June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We received a quarterly performance report. Generally speaking, boardings and on-time performance were consistent with the same quarter last year. One thing I did note was pulse evening hours were reduced, which meant that boardings are lower, but on-time performance has improved. With the June booking, and if I get any of this wrong, someone needs to correct me. With June booking, the 7A and 7B layover at the airport will be shifted to a new location at the request of the airport. The 95 express route will stop at Bright Point Community College in Chester. And the Route 5 and Pulse trips are being added. So that's what my note was. I didn't really understand that. So
We're adding some of the trips back, yes.
oh, okay, got it. So restoring some service on Route 5 and the Pulse. We also had a legislative update. The one item that stuck with me was that there's consideration for data center tax, and that's in conference committee, but that could direct more funds towards transit, about $1.5 million coming to GRTC. With the zero fare update, staff's working on a strategy to generate about $1 million a year. And as a reminder, Plan RVA is evaluating the feasibility and sustainability of fare fee transit in the region. And that study is expected to be complete in June. Neil provided an overview of RideFinders, articles of incorporation and bylaws. And the highlights include that this board has oversight of RideFinders staffing and contracts. And the RideFinders Advisory Board is comprised of industry experts who help with the direction, vision, and initiatives of RideFinders. And we'll continue to discuss that item at development. That's all I have.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you. Barb, we appreciate that. Mr. Engel, financial updates.
We went over the FY27 budget, which we'll go in shortly, covered which the Finance Committee did approve recommendation for approval to the full board. We also went over some of the items that we've already passed in the consent agenda, and we had also recommended that they be passed. The Finance Committee recommended the full board pass them, but we've already done that. And then we went over March financials, and they look to be in line. That we look to end up where we relatively close to where we expected with the budget. So feel pretty good about that. It's been mentioned a couple of times, but the budget and everything we're doing is still to keep fare free for the next fiscal year. I think that that the earlier we get that out, make sure people know that, the better. And then we also had some legislative updates, but similar to report, same as Barb. So I think John has a little bit to share on the budget, right?
All right, so Any questions from Mr. Engel to this point? All right, so let's go ahead and roll into the budget.
All right, so it's starting on page 33 of the packet. This PowerPoint presentation I went through on the finance committee meeting on Thursday, May 14th. And in this PowerPoint are just some of the key assumptions that went into the budget that is being considered today. Where we have a current collective bargaining unit contract runs through September 30th, and that has a top wage rate assumption of 34.06. That would be for the first quarter. And will obviously be baked into assumptions into our budget. We will obviously work with the union to negotiate a new contract for 6 months. For the key staffing components for transportation on the operators, we're maintaining fixed route operators full-time at 325 positions, maintaining 27 part-time. We're consistent of 338.5 FTEs in both periods, about a little under $29 million in salaries associated with those 338.5 FTEs. On the microtransit, 30 full-time microtransit operators with 2 part-time folks, roughly about 2.2 million. Next slide, Dexter. And for the collective bargaining, this is the vehicle maintenance. We're looking for an increase of 1 mechanic for around $4.4 million for salaries contemplated. Next slide, Dexter. Baked into the underlying assumptions here, there's no significant changes in routes or frequencies for fiscal 27 versus 26. You can see we're contemplating about 6.8 million service miles and 617,000 service hours. Pretty much negligible increase, 26 versus 27, slight on miles. So on it, and so that's what would make the comment, no significant changes in routes and frequencies. Next slide, Dexter. This is included in here. We've been talking about this for the last couple of years. This kind of focuses on some of the compound annual growth rate over key items of our expenses. What compound annual growth rate is if you're going from a base period of 2020, which is prior to CBTA, up to current, what would be the even return increase year to year? So we look here at some of the larger components, mechanics wages, operator wages. They're functioning about 6.28% increase on a compound annual growth rate for mechanics wages, 8.64% for operator wages. We see some higher CAGRs on the pension expenses for both transportation and maintenance. That's due and change due to the collective bargaining contract. Increase the percentage contribution for GRTC side. Coming down here, significantly see service. This would be our We Drive You contract. You can see it's almost 12% compound annual growth rate for the base period of 2020. And you can see also in here some of the other Allied University, the public safety officers and safety ambassador programs that came in the 26 budget. All in all, the sum of these base drivers, about 920 basis points increase. You can see down here some of the activity drivers, like the FTEs or operators, mechanics. The top wage rate, how it changed in 2020, the top wage rate was $23.54. It's going up, contemplating at 34.06 right now in union contract. And then you can see the change in the revenue hours and the revenue miles and revenue hours over the course. So substantial increase in revenue miles and revenue hours since 20. And you can see a lot of this is driven by wage rate as well as pension contribution rates. Next slide, Dexter. So in here, this is the operating by the department and then the cost category. So you see that we have a total proposed 2027 proposed budget, $101,075,821. If you look at, we have it separate. So we have the baseline 26, baseline 27, baseline, and we have the grant funded expenses. So you can see here, Cheryl was talking about 95.4 for baseline in 26, increasing to 96,351, roughly a % increase. And you see more of a significant change in the grant funded, primarily in the planning and scheduling. These are the GRTC funded grant programs, so expecting significantly less in 27. But looking at the categories, if you look at the base, operations 42.5 million, 43.7. Obviously, the assumption there is the headcount was relatively flat, so it's just rate increase. Maintenance, there was one headcount increase. What is acting here as being offsetting is we have a little less budgetary for bus parts in 27. We're a little more aggressive than what we thought for 26. It didn't realize, as you can see in the March report, we're favorable on those. Benefits here, 16.5, it's about $600,000 increase, a little over that. That is driven by, obviously, this because the benefits are, the GRTC's portion is 16% of the wages, so the wages are going up. So that's going to drive them as well. As you might recall from the January meeting, the medical benefits are relatively flat due to the renewed contract we executed with Cigna. Insurance and safety, you can see here, 914 versus 934. That's the DRPT grant for the public safety officers. So if you're looking at this as a base, 4.6 to 4.697, it's basically reflecting increases in policy premiums to the hardening of the market a little bit. Planning and scheduling, you'll notice on the base portion, it's going down about 670,000. That's due to reallocation of employees. Part of this budget, we have the PMO. So there are some individuals, the data analysts that used to be in the planning group are now in the PMO. So that's a shift. You'll see them down in the administrative when we get there in a moment. And it's also a reduction in advertising expense. So that's it. So the marketing and communications is where the advertising is reduced. So IT, you can see here there's the grant portions. What that is the DRTC grants that are covering the service contracts, the annual maintenance agreements for the service software. So that's increasing a little bit. The proposed baseline's down a couple $100,000. That's also due to reallocation of certain IT resources in the PMO, which will be the admin. So you see the administrative function, it's going up, from 4.55 million to 4.83 million, and that's a function of folks coming out of the planning group into the administrative PMO group, as well as IT into the PMO group, which is an administrative. You see the operating taxes and licenses, those are going up slightly, about 70,000. That's more or less based upon, because that's your FICA Medicare taxes. As the wages are going up, those go up commensurate as well. Looking at it on the category, you see, wages are up about 1.2 million, and then kind of maintenance, you see it going down a little bit. That's reflecting that we have less budgeted, less parts. Fuels and lubricants, you can see that's up. No surprise, the cost of fuels are going up as we had a resolution to amend our gasoline contract. Services are relatively flat. casualty and liability, that's the same as discussed above. Utilities slight increase as well, because that will be some, the cost of electricity as well as also generated by the cost of fuels. But all in all, it's about a 1% increase year over year. Next slide, Dexter. So on the operating revenue assumptions, Paramount zero fare continues through June 30th of 2027. At our April board meeting, the board had passed a resolution regarding the CBTA regional public transportation funding. So the operating contribution is 32 million, and the capital local share match is 2 million. Also want to point out through the CBTA regional funding through the municipalities, this is the CBTA 35% pot going through the municipalities. Richmond, North-South BRT through Richmond, CBTA 35% fund through Richmond to us, the North-South BRT environmental design, about 2.447 million. And through the CBTA 35% fund through Henrico to GRTC, the Pulse BRT extension west to farm construction, 728,000. And from DRPT through Chesterfield to us is the reimbursements for the Route 1 extension for both fixed and paratransit. That assumption is $1,950,000. Next slide. As you are aware of, our CBTA, the CBTA legislation requires it has an annual index of CPIU. So we use the February to February. So CPIU February versus February was 2.41%, which is generating an increase of about $345,000 in the operating contributions from Richmond and Rico and Chesterfield. Next slide, next. This is the calculation of CPIU. You can see green boxes February to February yields the 2.41. Next slide. There's individual slides to show the historical progression for each of the municipalities. This is Richmond's. Next slide. Henrico's. Next slide. Chesterfield. Next slide. And then we get to our total operating budget. So once again, we have the baseline column and the baseline column for 2027. You have the grant funded. Pulling up the top, you have the CBTA revenue that we approved in the regional public transportation plan. Next line, I'm happy to report that the FISDAC formula this year went up. You can see we were a little concerned. It went from 25, went down, and now it came back up. That's a complicated formula. It includes ridership, spend, and how your proportionate share is relative to the total pool. So happy to see the increase in there. These, the Richmond, Henrico, and Chesterfield, these are the operating contributions that are paid by CPIU. You can see here in the grant funded column, these are the 35% CBTA pass-throughs through Richmond and Henrico, and this is the DRPT grant for the 1A through Chesterfield. In this budget, we're contemplating the use of about $1,929,000 of GRTC fiscal 2026 surplus. We're expecting to be favorable to budget, carry that forward. 5307 Flex and ADA, that's basically the cost of our preventative maintenance program, primarily labor, as well as ADA. That's about 10% of the 5307 awards, around $1.5 million for the cost of contracting or paratransit service revenues. And then down here, you have operating grant from DRPT. This significant portion of this is the line extensions for Route 1, 7A and B from the DRPT, as well as the microtransit revenue support. The federal pieces, this is relative to primarily for the administrative software through 5307 program, as well as other 5307 capital operating grants income. We have $1 million assumption here for advertising. And then we have Petersburg's subsidy of the Petersburg Richmond Express at $200,000, and in other sources, the significant piece is the interest income. So all in all, balanced budget of $101,075,821, and also in the package was the budget book. Did you go back to the first expense chart? Like 21. By category. Yeah. There you go. So as I look at planning and scheduling from 24 to 25 to 26, so I'll go 8.1, 7.2, 9, 11.1, and then 2.3. What? Well, just total proposed.
Yeah, so the biggest piece in here, in 26, we broke out, this was the DRPT, north-south engineering, western extension and so forth.
And that's more what I was, but the years ahead, previous 8, 7, there's some bigger numbers. What, if anything, should we expect as a difference in 2027 budget that we'll actually see on the ground as a result of that number change?
But I think what these are the same basic core projects, it's just where they are and what was done. Because this revenue is reimbursement based. So there has been work done on it that has been reflected in the prior period. So we didn't break out it was included in these numbers in the prior years. So we took the opportunity starting in 26 and 27 to highlight the different pieces so we could have more of a picture.
So it's a good part of that expense side is the retirement side of it. We're nearing the end of some of those.
Along those same lines, I know that there were a lot of grant applications submitted.
Yes.
And some of them had to do with building repairs. You talked about the IT. There was a lot of IT stuff. What is a good overview or status of the grants that have been awarded? As far as like operating, I think some of them were to continue operating new routes.
So like microtransit, we're into year 3 of the microtransit agreements. There's a new microtransit GRPT grant to cover the Broad Rock. There's also a Ashland one as well. I believe they're all listed through in the budget book.
Yes.
So
It's in the budget book.
Yes.
probably
Towards the end.
slide 82.
Towards the end.
Yes.
We keep going. Here's a summary of this. This is the chart that you probably go through what's in there.
83.
So fleet car maintenance support, so security improvements, annualized, and this is the service, this is DRPT. DRPT, this is for like Hastis and Clever and VIA. Those are the service-oriented softwares. The state usually funds those at 68%. They don't fund the admin software like Microsoft and Great Plains. That's funded through the Fed at 80/20. See, Oracle Cloud ERP is a new one here, as you're all aware, as we're been going through an RFP process for that. So the state is funding. This is not the full portion. This is just phase 1 or year of it. So they're funding it at 68% to cover the cost of the solution implementer, as well as certain internal staff that are in the PMO that are running the project. Comprehensive facility assessment redesign, some additional ETI installation. There's north-south BRT engineering, pre-development services for the property over here, using the formerly known as the church lot. Community and corporate relations intern, you have support vehicles purchases. So this would be capital. So you're looking more interested in the operating grants. So
Yeah, I was just curious whether there was a grant that we were hoping to get that we didn't get that would impact riders,
we're riders.
like service.
Well, there's capital, obviously the capital portions in ETI, which are good, but from an operating grant standpoint, they're more or less, interns, the support of the service software, which we got
Well, yeah, and you talked about Broad Rock and Ashland. they got a grant to keep running microtransit.
Next slide. Next page.
Adrian can help answer that
Yeah.
question.
We did anticipate, we applied for some of those extensions, for the frequency increases related to like the Route 7, the 19, the grants that they were I guess, VDOT funds that we had gotten, back in like.
Oh, right.
2020.
Yeah.
Those were ending this year, so we applied for TRIP this time around. We did not get those for those, grants, but we did get, as far as regional connectivity, a Powhatan grant as well as the Broad Rock, so the micro transits were.
Also, and obviously significant, the public safety officers are in here, the coordinate destination study, as well as the service standard studies. Service, studying service as well.
So the 7 and 19, since you didn't get the trip for that, you've figured out in the budget how to fund that.
We were still able to
Cover it.
operate with this. I do want to, Mr. Engel did mention a question about why the numbers have gone down in the studies. We took a extra effort at just seeing when they were actually expensed versus the year before. You may have seen a larger lump sum, knowing we weren't going to spend 9.7 million in FY26. So even though we got a large amount in capital funds in FY27 in terms of grants, we only put in the budget what we would expect in that particular year.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Got a, because I want to make sure I'm understanding our just general perspectives, because our budget is our plan for this year, but it's really going to have impacts on how we do business moving forward. And so I was looking, I'm thinking my 3 areas that are going to impact us moving forward is for sure fare free, 2 paratransit, which is vital. And I know we're going to be talking about some of that at the committee level. But, you know, while it is one of the most expensive, it's one of the most vital because that population has less options than normal. And then I think the third is just the lack of investment that we're going to get from the federal government. And so I'm wanting to make sure as we vote on this, just understanding what our outlook is for those 3, because I think there's been, and I'm hoping that there's a continued strong commitment for fare free. And so that, but it also means it's expensive. The same for paratransit. My vote always going to be, you know, to support that. But we're looking at the face of those federal reductions. So I want to kind of talk through how we plan on funding that. So far, it looks like CVTA has given us those investments or whatnot, have made it where it's a pretty clear path and picture, at least from how I'm looking at the budget, for us to be able to continue those investments. And I think we're also making the strategic decision to, you know, as we look at growing the system, if you want expansion, you pay for expansion, you know, kind of a pay for services model. I want to make sure that that I'm correct in understanding that's our path forward, and that based on that, staff is, I think I asked in the committee meeting, y'all like this budget? Everybody said, yep, we committed to it, we like it. But I really am hoping to hear that strategic vision for this is our recommended path forward on doing business. We're going to leverage this new resource in CVTA to help us fill these gaps. There appear to be enough resources there to insert those funds appropriately to carry out the system with everything else we're doing. But I'm just not hearing how the reductions in the federal government, you know, will impact us moving forward. And is our planning long-term maintaining paratransit and fare free with the resources that we have available? Or are we looking for something different?
address how this ties into the FY 20. Sure. So Barb kind of mentioned this already with the development committee, where we are looking at FY 28, the next 5 years, a little bit harder in a regional, I guess, perspective. So we have a core design retreat that's June 1st through 3rd, which will be all the jurisdictions coming together at Plan OVA. And they're developing kind of 3 scenarios. If funds are exactly the same as today, what will service look like? If we are able to tap into some additional revenue sources, looking at the priorities actually from the 9 jurisdictions, and kind of coming up also with kind of an unconstrained list based on that. We will be identifying additional revenue potentials with that exercise, and then we'll be presenting that as a 5-year look ahead for the board to see kind of what our vision is and to make sure things are sustainable. And it will include zero fare as part of kind of that base. And then the federal formula funding, I know John needs to do that more, but we did get our appropriation for FY 26. And it was actually growth in 5307 and flat for 5339. And those are our 2 performance-based, population-based funding that we get from the federal government. So we haven't really seen an impact yet.
And you all completed a paratransit study, and that was an item discussed at development, you know, the care and care plus costs just short of $50 a trip. But the care on demand is closer to 20. So they're looking to try to get some efficiencies there.
Yeah, and I'm reviewing that because I'm also thinking about that customer clientele, and that's where part of my questions come in. So for example, if you're the type of wheelchair you might be in, right? Paratransit have the lift, be able to get in, even if it's a fully electronic wheelchair, although those won't go into certain vehicles, only a limited amount. So how is that going to impact that customer for which we're seeing an increase of the need for services throughout, not just transit? So I know that decision and conversation is coming forward, but again, that's why I'm asking these questions. I'm curious about the fit long term, because the cost of continuing to rise, the cost of service isn't going down, neither is the cost of workers and things of that nature. So as we make a decision on this budget, it's the baseline moving forward. So
what's the messaging? If you just take, what was just shared, let's just say that the 3 priorities, that's the Don's perspective, fare-free, paratransit, and the 3rd one was what?
reduction in federal resources. I haven't adjusted to that.
So what's the simple message that this budget gives us on that, I guess, is, so we are committed to fare-free through this budget, but I guess that's just like that's not a hypothetical question, that's like a real question from somebody. Yeah, the budget, what is the story in the budget about fare-free? What's the story in the budget about what we are committing to do with paratransit, et cetera?
Well, fare free is included, and GRTC has been able to afford that by identifying surplus funds from the prior year, as it was last year, it's about $2 million. We have continued over. We additionally have increased just based on the actuals related to our advertising program. We are beyond the 600,000 we had budgeted last year, and we're aiming for hopefully conservative 1 million can overachieve. So it's about 3 million. The rest we were able to just kind of identify through operating revenue that we already had. John already mentioned a little bit more from the state to cover some of the other operating expenses to kind of alleviate to go towards funding that gap, which is roughly about $6 million. As far as paratransit.
So I'm sorry. So overage, 2 million. And what was that from? Just from the budget from that, I mean, just from last year.
Some.
Then additional from advertising, and then some from operating.
It's exact formula.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
The second part was the paratransit, I guess, perspective on how we're gonna handle it. Kevin and team continue to keep us updated just as costs are related to paratransit. We are looking at ways, hence the one that we presented to you guys, a way to kind of put some efficiencies in the system. We are looking at also other, I guess, agencies, and there's hybrid models, dynamic models that we'll be also looking at. And honestly, it might end up being an RFP that ends up going back out. That kind of is a hybrid. We also have requests, I'll go ahead and say, from Chesterfield, other paratransit entities within the region. For example, Dash also has one to look at it to see if there is some sort of energy within the whole region as far as putting service in. So that is something we're also exploring. And so we're just going to kind of dive into that for now. But the goal was to put the change in by August 1st, but we'll continue to kind of defer that and look at a model that I guess would benefit those who are already using the system as well. With that, right?
Is it fair to say that in looking at this budget, we have committed to fare free for this year using predetermined surplus, insurance, and operational efficiencies that have come along that guarantee fare free for this year. But moving forward, we're going to have to evaluate it on an annual basis. And similarly, we're going to keep the level of service at high levels for paratransit for our most vulnerable. And that's included, both are included in this budget.
Yes, they are.
Yes. And intentional as in budget overages.
Yeah.
So concerted efforts to try to add, yeah, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm running late this morning. So if I recall correctly, there was some question last budget cycle where we talked about surplus and surplus policies as to how we want to use surplus. Can we have a better appreciation for how we get to the place of knowing what the surplus is and how we get there, and whether or not there is any standing policy as it relates to surplus? And secondly, as it relates to the advertisement budget, we seem to have done better than projected, and look like we are under projecting based on done last year. And is that just a safety margin there, or is the programming or advertisement suggesting that we should stay at that level?
I think that's just advertising. So last year, for the board's request, we wanted to come in very conservative because the policy was just adopted the year before, and so we had no baseline revenue for that robust of an advertising program. So in doing so, we set the 600,000 as a goal. We have exceeded that right above it. So we are comfortable that based on the second half of the year coming in almost double the first half of the year, that we anticipate that momentum continuing into the next year. So I think $1 million is still, hopefully it's conservative, but a good number.
So did we use all of the surplus to go toward fare free?
John has the surplus projections within the last month financials.
It was, right now, wouldn't it $1 million to $1.5 million? Yeah.
I think so that the more robust question, I guess, was about the surplus policy. Like what is the policy? What was the surplus last year? Where did the money go, et cetera?
Back in August of 2022, the board passed the GRTC contingency funding policy. So currently what is in there is roughly around $8.5 million, which was in there prior to the surplus, this resolution. So what this resolution allows for GRTC to establish a contingency funding policy goal of 25% of the adopted operating budgets, obviously $101 million. be roughly 25 million change. What we have what we would do is as we finish each year, we could bring the resolution to the finance committee and then to the board to designate any of the fund balance or surplus into the contingent reserve. Last 2 years, in 26 budget, we applied $5 million of that surplus to the 26 budget, and here we're applying $2 million of the expected 26 surplus to the 27 proposed budget. How this is calculated at the end of the fiscal 22 audit cycle, when Brown Everett signs off and we have Brown Everett brief the finance committee, we can calculate that in fiscal 22 there was actual surplus audit was 3.6 million. Fiscal 23 was 2.77 million. 24 was about break even, and last year 25 was a total about 7.5 million. But we did that try to utilize the COVID dollars as there had to be expended necessary. So we used COVID eligible expenses. So there was already the existing finance contingent reserve was 5.7 million in addition to the Davis Avenue contingency 6.7. So all total surpluses and reserves were 22.2 million. That's maintained in our various LGIP and sweep investment accounts, earning interest. So that's, yeah, then one of the items that's in here, and see contributing to the surplus is the interest earned on excess cash, which helps also fund some of the zero there.
All right. And we can talk more about this in committee. If I don't know, did he answer? You didn't get the answer you look for. Okay.
I just,
We decide each year though, really,
Yeah.
on a yearly basis, what we're gonna do. We have an overall view, but we still have the ability each year, based on where we are in the budget and what we can do, to either roll it into the next budget or put it into reserves, or some of both. And I think we've been deciding that mostly each year, if I'm not mistaken.
And we all understand, we're professionals. We know that the reserve is there for a reason. It's not like we're just sitting on top of money. So I don't want anybody to think that we're just sitting there and then, yeah, it end up being a part of another discussion later.
Just to make sure if all the funding goes away, still pay our people. That's what it's there for.
Right. But this conversation is important, particularly as we talk about extending services, fare-free, paratransit, microtransit, all these different things. I mean, this is important because,
follow up,
yeah,
if I may, we struggled with the performance evaluation this year a little bit as it relates to how we go about doing it in category. I think the budget really is a tool that should be accompanied with performance expectations. And if we could consider that, Dave, I know you've been working really hard to try to.
Yeah.
And I'm not being as responsive as I should. But I think this is an opportunity that when we do adopt a budget, that we come back with a performance expectation that is aligned with the budget, and that'll give us what we need as a tool for looking at annual evaluation as well.
that's good. Hold it for executive, because we're ready to go into executive session. So we're going into executive session in a minute. Yeah, no.
There's
Oh,
a request.
That's great.
Option of the budget that we, for this budget, that we look at asking for those performance expectations, and they can be broken out within the broad categories that we're looking at in the budget. And that will set us up, I think, in a good position moving forward. And also the concerns as it relates to whether or not we should be looking at a 3-year, 5-year projection as to where we're going, what's going to happen, especially with big things like zero funding. I mean, You know, once you get into that place, it's difficult to get out of that place to satisfy the customer. But, you know, a 3-year projection of revenues, shortfalls, kinds of alternative strategies that we want to put in place under certain kinds of scenarios, I think would be something that we should ask the staff as well to provide for the board. So we do have a action plan that is looking forward.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Just for clarification, I just want to make sure we heard that correct. The current policy for reserve is 25%, which would make sense, 25 million. It currently sits around 22. So we're seeking to close that gap, finish that to put us on policy. That would be a goal. The fiscal year 26 projected surplus is, did you say 1?
Between about 1.9 million.
Projected by the end of the year.
In the March package was 1.4 million and change, but we feel that more.
1.9. And did you say that the 27 budget incorporates 2 million of taking that 26 surplus and using it for 27? So the expectation is that 0 would go into the reserve because it's using it in 27 budget. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. That currently we're projected to finish this year at 2026 fiscal year with $1.1 million in surplus. And that is all baked into the 27 budget in order to make the expenses work. So the revenue as part of this 27 budget includes $2 million of rollover surplus and 0 going into the surplus fund. All right. And then it's not a question at all. It's just a thought. I think, you know, Mr. Donald's question about fare free, it's going to continue to be a year by year thing. I think what you were looking for, and I don't speak for you, but what's the commitment? Every year are we going to come back and say, well, fare free really depends on if we have a surplus and if we found advertising money. And I guess you used the word priority. Is it at some point in time, is it going to become a priority of this organization that it's not contingent upon, oh, we had a bad year, I got to throw fares back in there, people on this bubble. I think for me personally, that's what I'd like to eventually get to, that riders don't have to wait every year for the Citizen article or the Times Dispatch article to go, well, the board met and they said, well, thank God last year was okay, we can continue. So I think that's your question. I don't want to speak for you.
No, you hitting it.
It's, you know, the commitment, I'm glad you asked for the commitment this year. It's there because we found the surplus and we're using it. But like, I think your question is, when is it a priority and not an if possible?
That's right.
You know, and it's not a question. I'm not seeking an answer. I think we all know where we're at right now.
Yeah.
But as long as we're at 22 million at 25 and we're rolling surplus into the next year to make ends meet, it's not going to be
I think we give direction. And I mean, I think we say that's the priority. That's the priority. Like I'm tired of this every single year too. I don't want to keep, I think it's a priority. And then every year I read that, you know, we don't have money or blah, 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 blah. Like at this point, I think we need to say that fare free is a priority. I think that everybody on this board feels this way, or at least the majority of us on the board feel this way. So I think starting at this budget going forward, we need to say that fare free is a priority for GRTC, and we will make sure that it is in the budget, and we will find the ways to make it happen. I don't think, no disrespect to staff, but I don't think we need to be asking staff every year whether or not we're going to do fare free. Like, I think we say we're going to do it, and staff need to find a way to make it happen.
Fully agree, Mr. Chair. I think, and that was the point that I was kind of getting at, is that, listen, we agree. Everybody wants it. We figured it out for this year. But as we move forward, because once you finish one budget, you're ultimately planning for the next. And the decisions that we make along the way should be to ensure that we're making a way for fare free moving forward. So as we decide what gets cut, where it gets expanded, you know, decisions on growth, all of those things should be through the lens of fare free first. Fare free first, everything else next. And so if that is the position, and that's the position of the board, of course, we'll have a future meeting to be able to kind of declare those things. But I do think it's important as we close this chapter on this budget and begin implementing that it is important for staff to know this is what your board is desiring for the foreseeable future.
That's what.
So one other question. Fare free, should we in some way acknowledge the value in the budget for fare free? Because there's a dollar amount associated with that. And when we make that as a policy decision, we should also be making a policy decision as to how we're going to cover that dollar amount strategically.
So we're making it this year, but I guess what I'm hearing you ask, so what is that number?
Yeah.
Like there is it is not spelled out directly in the budget. Is it? Is it spelled out, John? I'm asking.
No, there's not.
Okay, so,
Currently,
It's
they
six-
figure out 6.8.
okay, 6 million. So, but I didn't hear 6 million. I heard 2 million. Then I heard another million or some change.
Plus, there's probably about $1.7 million incrementals to Zach, and then, the increase in the advertising revenues. Then they're at $1 million up from 600,000, but.
Okay.
It's kids.
And then.
So- So what I'm hearing Councilwoman Robinson say, as we go forward, we need to, in our mind, know that fare free is costing about 6 million, and we need to know where that 6 million is targeted to be coming from. Right. Right, so we know where it's coming from this year, but that's further discussion as we go forward. But I think that's good for us to know. But this is good. This is a good commitment. Any other questions about this budget? Yes, sir.
Page 82, just one quick question about Western expansion. 2027 spend 2.275 million, that's construction and that's grant funded.
That's the 35% CDPA fund, the 2774.
The project though for fiscal year 27 is engineering.
Engineering, so it's design, plant, right? This 2.27 million for Western BRT
Yes.
is engineering design plan.
Yes.
And then the 28 to 30 is 13.2 million, the projection, I guess. Is that combined over this?
Correct. So the total grant was about 15 and it's all for construction, but you can use a portion of that for preliminary engineering. So this year we're using the engineering portion of us to save for natural construction.
And this 28 to 30 projection, that's grant funded, that's committed already, that's awarded. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, okay, all right, I was gonna say one more thing, but that, you know what, I'll hold that thing for the next meeting. I think we've done good. Motion second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we need to start to add in RideFinders as a part of our meeting. Being that RideFinders is also a responsibility of the board of GRTC. I'm gonna ask Ms. Ruffin to come forward and give us an executive director's report, if she doesn't mind.
I did want to let you all know that RideFinders continues to receive national recognition for our impact in innovation and transportation demand management, which is what we are. We were featured in the Association for Commuter Transportation, which is our professional organization, in their 2025 Global TDM Impact Report portion of the campaigns, Change It campaign. And this is the leading organization for us. And the report highlights impacts of programs advancing smarter, more sustainable transportation solutions worldwide. So this is global. So this is going out in Australia, Europe, and to be featured is really great. This is our second year being featured. We were in the inaugural edition last year. And so this is our second year. This year, the Virginia Department of Transportation was featured, as well as the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. So we're really excited about that. Recently, we also received the Commonwealth Award for Environmental Sustainability Communications at the 79th Annual Virginia PR Awards for our Town of Change It campaign. And this is through the Public Relations Society of America, the Richmond chapter. We were also finalists in 2 other categories. For social media organic category, which means you don't pay any money, you just post on social media, as well as the website redesign. Our RideFinders Advisory Board convened on April 8th, 2026 to review our and our initiatives. And we're happy to report that since the beginning of the fiscal year, we've generated $19,331.80 in sales, which is from van pool vouchers, which we buy at cost and sell at cost. So we don't make any money, but it's our sales that we have, and also postage stamps. We've been out in the community. We've done some transportation fairs at the Better Housing Coalition communities, Randolph Place and Rockwood Village. We promoted transit. We had transit information to be able to help those folks. Also, we've done Earth Day events, Central Virginia benefits fairs for state employees with VRS. Recently, we were at the May We Thrive Mental Health Resource in Henrico County, just trying to help those people with transportation options. And so making the connection between, that's a part of being wellness, is having transportation be readily available to them. We've also done some support and outreach and volunteer efforts. We partnered with Fit for Kids at Miles Jones Elementary School. We were able to give the kids vegetables, which, you know, just to introduce them to those vegetables during the lunch hour. As well as we were at Westover Hills and Francis McClenny Elementary Schools for bike, walk, and road to school days. So we have 10,962 registered clients with our program. And this fiscal year from April 30th, we have 522 new members, which is up from all of FY25 fiscal year. So we're making great efforts in that. And we currently support 74 van pools, and we've got about 9,935 inquiries where people are going onto our site, trying to find carpool or van pool matches. So it just makes sure that we're making a big impact and getting people to have different options, like carpooling and trees and vans.
All right, wait, do you wanna, can you say something about the, I mean, even though I know it's a consent, but we didn't, it's not a part of the consent we voted on earlier, right? No. Is there anything can you just say something like a 10-second blurb about the van pool program?
Yeah, this is for an RFQ we work with procurement to put out for to have a new contract with our van pool providers, and also to see if we can find some new providers for the program. This allows us to, if any other van pool vendors are interested in becoming a part of the program, we already have our RFQ. If they meet the requirements, we would of course come back to the board with those contracts. But this is for the 3 that we currently work with: Ride Easy, Community Enterprise, and KDA Connections. And those are the 74 vendors that I mentioned. Those are the 3 vendors that we have.
All right, so any questions from Ms. Ruffin in general?
Just curious, the 7-year commitment, is that typical? That seems significant.
It is, and that's why we put it out like 2025. We started the process because it had been 3 years since the last one done. And that's typical for us in our industry.
All right, can I get a motion to accept this this item from Ms. Ruffin?
Move. Second.
All right, moving second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Ruffin, appreciate it. Colleagues, I do not have a report, but we do need to do a quick executive session to hear from Dave, if you don't mind. All right. I move that the GRTC Board of Directors hold a closed meeting pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for the discussion and consideration of the performance of the Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Richmond Transit Company. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I need everybody gone except for Joe, wherever he is. Joe, I need you to stay.
Was on.
Provisional
Yeah, I know that's.
Station Act.
I got it.
And whereas section 2.2 of that 3712 of the Code of Virginia requires certification by the board, that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from opening meeting requirements under Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certified resolution applies, and only such public meeting business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Witness the following vote of the board members certifying: Tyrone Nelson, yes. Jim Ingle.
Yes.
Barbara Smith.
Yes.
Dave Anderson.
Yes.
Dan Smith.
Yes.
Terrell Hughes.
Yes.
Odie Donald.
Yes.
Ellen Robertson. Nicole Jones. That's it, right? Yes, that's it. All right. Colleagues, any other business? All right, meeting adjourned.